The winter's here, it's cold outside, it's time to drink another beer tonight. It's cold outside. Go! Hello everyone, my name's Stonsey Boy and welcome back to Reading with Stonsey. Today we are going to be reading pages 41 to 60. I'm pretty sure there's no altercation with that. Right? I don't know. I have an auto clicker on, so it's hard for me to say. Yes, 41 to 60. My auto clicker is working on a machine. So Dassie's fun. But yeah, without further ado, let's begin. Was this the neighbor who was a foster father? Victor asked as he pauses the liquor-chapped lips. He reaches for the empty bottle of water and holds it up toward the one-way mirror, not putting it down until one of the texts say Edison is on his way. Yes, but he got you safely home, so why has he thought of living with him so horrific? When he pulled up in front of my house, he told me I needed to thank him for a ride by licking his lollipop. The plastic bottle shrieks at a protest as it crumples in his fist. Christ. Then he pulled my head toward his lap. I stuck my finger down my throat and made myself throw up all over. Made sure to hit the horn too, so his wife would come out. He opens another sugar packet and tips half of it into her mouth. He got arrested for molestation a month or so later, and she moved away. The door slams open and Edison tosses a new bottle of water at the girl. Protocol says we're supposed to remove the cap for the choking hazard, but his other hand is occupied by a sheaf of photo papers that he drops on the table, along with a bag of IDs and a crook of the elbow. Why not telling us the truth, he snarls. You're protecting the man who did this? And Nara was right. This is the difference seeing it and reading about it. Victor lets out a slow breath, using it as a push on incentive revulsion. He shifts the first picture of the pile, then the second, then the third and fourth, all depiction portions of the hallways in the ruined garden complex. He stops them in the seventh one, easing the paper away so she can look at it more easily. When she sets it back down on top of her finger gets a little tawny curve near the center of the image. That's Lionette. Your friend? Her bandaged finger gently moves along the line of the glass in the picture. Yeah, she whispers, she was. Birthdays, like names, were best forgotten in the garden. As I got to know the other girls, I knew they were all fairly young, but ages weren't something you'd like to ask about. It just didn't seem necessary. At some point we'd die, and the hallways provided daily reminders of what that would mean. So why compound the strategy until Lionette? I've been in the garden for 6 months, and while I become friendly with most of the other girls, I was a closet to Bina and Bliss. They were the most like me, the ones who didn't feel up to the high drama of weeping and bemoaning or inevitably tragic fates. We didn't cower the gardener. We didn't suck up to him like becoming favorites would somehow change our fortunes. We were the ones who put up with what we had and otherwise did our own thing. The gardener adored us, except for meals, which were served at specific times where were never a place we had to be. So most of the girls' room hopped for comfort. If the gardener wanted you, he'd simply check the cameras and come find you. When Lion and Bliss asked Bliss and me to spend the night in her room, I didn't think anything of it. It was something we did all the time. I should have recognized the desperation in her voice, the edge of her words, but that was something else the garden numbed you to. Like beauty, desperation and fear were as common as breathing. We were provided with clothing in the daytime, always in black, always things that left our backs bare and the wings could be seen. But we're given nothing for sleeping. Most of us slept in underwear and wished for bras. The hostel and apartment had been good practice for me. I got far less modesty than most of the other girls had coming into the garden, one less humiliation that might break me. The three of us curled together atop the mattress, waiting for the lights to go out, and gradually we became aware that Lionette was shaking. Not like a seizure or anything, just tremor ran over her skin and electrified every part of her movement. I sat up, reaching for her hand and laced her fingers together. What's wrong? Tears gleaming in her flecked eyes, making me suddenly nauseated. I'd never seen Lionette cry before. She always hated tears in anyone, especially herself. Tomorrow's my 21st birthday, she whispered. Bliss squeaked and threw her arms around her friend, burying her face on Lionette's shoulder. Fuck, Lion, I'm so sorry. We have an expiration date then, I asked quietly. 21? Lionette clutched Bliss and me in the desperate strength. I kind of want to make him earn it, but if fighting makes it more painful, shit, I feel like such a coward. But if I have to die, I don't want it to hurt. She started sobbing. I wish this was one of the times the solid walls came down the glass, so we could be trapped in this little space, and her weeping wouldn't be heard by anyone down in the hall. Want to think they were weak once she was gone, but for the most part, the walls only came down 2 mornings a week. That what we'd taken to calling the weekend. Whether it was or not, though, the actual gardeners could do maintenance around the beautiful prison. The hired help never saw us, and the multiple sets of closed doors between us and them guaranteed they never heard us either. No, wait. The walls came down when a new girl was brought, or two, or when one died. We didn't like it when the walls came down, wishing they would just was kind of extraordinary. We stayed with Lionette the entire night. Lionette, after she wept herself into exhausted sleep, and awoken to weep again. Around 4, she roused enough to stumble into the shower, and we helped her wash her hair, brushed it out, and arranged a regal braided crown. There was a new dress in her closet, an amber silk, fancy, glimmering gold threads that was bright and flame instead of all black. The color made her wings glow against her bright round skin. Brilliant pumpkin orange fleckled with gold and yellow closet, black spots, and the white frinkled bands of black on the very tips. The open wings of a lustrous copper. The gardener came for her just before daylight. He was an elegant figure of a man, maybe a little more above average height, well built. The type of man who always looked at least 10, 15 years younger than he actually was. Dark blonde hair, always perfectly in place and well trimmed, pale green eyes like the sea. He was handsome, that couldn't be argued. Even if my stomach still turned at the sight of him, I never seen him dressed all in black before. He stood in the doorway, thumbs hooked in the pockets, and just looked at us. Taking a deep breath, Lionette hugged Bliss tightly, whispered something in her ear before kissing her goodbye. When she turned to me, her arms painfully tight around my ribs. "My name is Cassidy Lawrence," she whispered, so quietly I could barely hear it. "Please don't forget me. Don't let them be the only one who remember me." She kissed me, closed her eyes, and allowed the gardener to lead her away. Bliss and I spent the rest of the morning in Lionette's room, going through the small personal items she'd managed to accumulate over the past 5 years. 5 years she'd been here. She took down the piracy curtains, folded them together in a bedding like a neat stack on the edge of the naked mattress. The book she kept under her pillows turned out to be the Bible, with 5 years of rage, despair, and hope scrawled all over the verses. There were enough origami animals for all the girls in the garden, and then some, so we spent the afternoon giving them away with all the black clothing. When we sat down to dinner, there was nothing left of Lionette in the room. That night, the walls came down. Bliss and I curled together in my bed, which actually had more bedding than sewn on sheet now. Personal touches were things we earned by not being troublesome, by not trying to kill ourselves. So I had sheets and blankets now, the same rich rose and purple as the lower wings of my back. Bliss cried and swore when the walls came down and trapped us in the room. This rose after a few hours, but before they come higher on the foot of the floor, she grabbed my hand and squeezed us through so she could search the hallways. But we only had to go a few feet. The gardener stood there, leaning back against the garden side wall as she studied the girl in the glass. Her head was burrowed against her chest, small syrups under her armpits, keeping her upright. Clear resin filled the rest of the space. A glow caught on the liquid like she was underwater. Could see almost every detail of the bright wings on her back, clearly presented against the glass. Everything that was Lionette, her fierce smile, her eyes was hidden away, so the wings were the only focus. She turned to us and ran a hand through the sleep-tangled hair, gently tugging it through the knots as he encountered. "You forgot to put your hair up, Maya. I can't see your wings." I started to gather into a twist in a rough knot and be caught with the wrist and pulled me after him, into my room. Bliss swore and ran down the hall, but not before I saw her tears. The gardener sat on my bed and brushed my hair until it gleamed like silk, running his fingers through it again and again. His hands moved elsewhere, in his mouth, and I could close my eyes and gently recited, "The Valley of Unrest." "Wait, what?" Edison interrupts, a sickening expression on his face. She looks away from the picture, giving a bemused look. "The Valley of Unrest," she repeats. "It's a poem by Edgar Allan Poe. They had gone unto the wars, trusting in the mild-eyed stars, nightly from their azure towers, to keep watch above the flowers. I like Poe. There's something refreshing about the man who's so unabashedly morose. But it's what I did whenever the gardener came in my room," she said baldly. "I wasn't going to fight him because I didn't want to die, but I wasn't going to participate either, so I let him do his thing and keep my mind occupied. So I'd recite Poe's poems. The day he finished your tattoo, was that the first time I recited Poe?" She finished it, and the one eyebrow mockingly. Victor flushes and nods. "No, thank God. I gotten curious of sex a few months before, so Hope loaned me off to one of her boys. Sort of." Edison makes a choking sound, and Victor can't help but be grateful that his wife has these kinds of discussions with his daughters. In any other setting, we probably did have called Hope a whore, except that Sophia, who actually had been a prostitute until her daughters were taken away by the cops, had a little sensitive about the words like that. Plus, Hope was in it for the fun, not the money. She could have made a fortune, though, male, female, priors, trios, or groups. Hope was up for anything. But there really wasn't much such thing as privacy in the apartment. except for the bathroom. It was all one room. After all, the curtains between the beds weren't thick enough to conceal much. No canopies away. They certainly didn't make anything soundproof. Hope and Jessica were only girls to bring people home, but they did with the most frequency, sometimes more than once a day. Early exposure, no pun intended, to pedophiles had left me mostly uninterested in sex. That, plus my parents, it seemed a horrific business, not one I wanted to be part of. But living with the girls gradually changed that. Then they weren't doing it, they were frequently talking about it, and even they laughed at me and answered silly questions about it, or in Hope's case decided to demonstrate how to masturbate. So eventually curiosity won over the distaste and I tried to give it a try. Well, I decided to think about giving it a try. I backed away from a lot of opportunities at first because still wasn't sure. Then one afternoon when I didn't have to go to work in the evening, Hope came home trailing two boys. Jason, we worked with, one thing with the few males over extremely female waitstaff, and his friend Topher, who was a pretty standard figure in the apartment. He frequently dropped by whether Hope was there or not. We thought they were fun to hang out with. Sometimes they brought food. The three were barely in the door before Hope was pulling off Jason's clothing, and the two of them were completely naked by the time they tumbled laughing through the curtains under their bed. Topher was the least had the grace to blush and kick the tray of clothing closer to the bed. I was on one of the couches with a book. One of the first things I did once I had a real address and got in the library card, I made a couple of trips a week. Reading had been an escape when I was younger, and even though I didn't have anything I particularly needed to escape from more, that was something I loved. Then clothing was more or less contained. Topher poured 2 glasses of orange juice. Social services had swung a couple days ago, so a fridge was actually stocked, and handed one of them to me and flopped next to me on the couch. What, you're not joining them? I teased, and his blush deepened. No, it's mystery that being with Hope is a little like having a timeshare, but I don't share that at the same time, he mumbled, and I snickered. Hopefully, it was exactly the same timeshare and proud of it. Topher was the model, maybe 19, who sometimes helped Gulliam with the deliveries make a few extra bucks. He was good looking in a bland model way, kind of good looking that seems ordinary because it's shoved in your face all the time. He was a decent guy, though. We talked over the manatee, a whole slew of us, and one gang had gone a week before. About a gig he had a few days as a living dummy for a temporary museum exhibit. About one of our mutual acquaintances getting married, and whether or not it would be the last, all while Hope and Jason went at it screaming and giggling. So, pretty much a normal afternoon. Eventually, though, their fun had to end. It's almost 4 o'clock, I yelled over the groaning. You two need to get to work. Okay, I'll finish 'em off. True to her word, she had Jason grunting in less than 30 seconds, and 10 minutes later they were both a quick rinse in the shower and they were off to work. Most of the girls were working at night, except for Naomi and Amber, who had both had a night class on Wednesdays and wouldn't be back until almost 10. Topher left a little while, but came back with takeout from Takis on the counter. I knew Hope's usual invitation to sex was to kiss someone and shove their hand down their pants, but I wasn't Hope. Hey, Topher, yeah? Do you want to teach me about sex? It was a different kind of straightforward. Anyone else probably would have blanched, but Topher was a friend of Hope's. Plus, he'd been there some time in the conversation. All the while, he had a smile, and I reassured the fact that I wasn't a smirk. Sure, if you think you're ready for it. I think so. I mean, we can always stop. Yes, we can, but tell me if you get uncomfortable, okay? Okay. Took the remains of our dinner and shoved them to overflowing trash by the door. Hope was supposed to take it out as she left for work. When he came back to the couch, she dropped him onto the cushion, gently pulled me lean against him. Well, start slow, he said, and he kissed me. We didn't actually have sex that night. He called it everything but it was comfortable, though, and fun. And we laughed as many a thing, which in itself would have been stranger the year before I first moved in. She kept the clothes on after Naomi and Amber came from class, but she stayed with me that night in my narrow bed, and we played more under the sheet until Naomi, in the next bed over, laughed and said if we didn't shut up, she was going to join us. It was a few days later the privacy to go all the way, and the first time I didn't really understand what the big deal was. Then we did it again, and that time I did. Spend the next few weeks feeling around until we met a girl at church and he wanted to be serious with. But it was easily as we become friends with benefits, we went back to being friends, without any awkwardness or hurt feelings after all. Neither of us had fallen for each other, neither of us were putting more into it than the other. I loved when he came to my apartment. Not because I expected sex after he started dating the church girl. Topher was just a good guy, someone we all adored. I did not, however, make me underestimate my parents' fascination with sex and to the exclusion of all else. She unscrews the cap and takes a long drink of water, rubbing out her sore throat as she swallows. Victor was grateful for the silence and thinks Edison must be as well. Both men staring at the table, trauma being what it is. Victor can't recall a victim interview where sex has been such a frank topic. He clears his throat, turning the photos over so he doesn't have to see the hallways lined with dead girls in glass and resin. Your next-door neighbor, when you were a child, was a pedophile, you said? But when did you see the others? Grand's lawn guy. He stops, blinks, and lowers the bottle of the water and Victor can't help but think she meant to say it. Perhaps the exhaustion was setting in the stronger grip. He files that thought away for now, but he watched for the other opportunities. You saw your gran often? He sighs and picks up a scab of one of her fingers. I lived with her, she answered reluctantly. When was this? My parents finally got divorced when I was 8. All the questions about money, about the house and cars, all the things were taken care of in one meeting. The next 8 months were spent with each arguing about the other would be stuck with me. Isn't that fantastic? Every kid should be forced to sit through 8 months of listening to parents actively not want them. Eventually, I decided that I'd be sent to live with Gran, my mother's mother, and both my parents would pay for child support. When the day came for me to leave, I sat on the front step with 3 suitcases, 2 boxes, and a teddy bear. The grand total of everything I owned. Together, neither of my parents was home. A year before, we got into new neighbors across the street, a youngish couple who had just had their first child. I used to love going over to see the baby. A beautiful little boy was broken or fucked up yet. With parents like this, maybe you'll never would be. He'd always give me a plate of cookies and a glass of milk, and he taught me how to play poker and blackjack. They were the ones who took me in a bus station, who helped me buy a ticket and the money my parents had left in the nightstand the day before. The ones who helped me load everything under the bus and introduced me to the driver to help me find a seat. When she gave me a lunch for a trip, complete with oatmeal raisin cookies and still warm from the oven, there were another family I wished to be a part of, but I wasn't theirs. Still, I waved goodbye to them and bus pulled away and I stood under the curb. Their baby held between them and waved until we couldn't see each other anymore. When I got to the city where Gran lived, I had to take a taxi from the bus station to the house. The driver swore all the way there about the people who had no business having kids. When I asked him what some of the words meant, he even taught me how to use them in sentences. My gran lived in a big, dilapidated house in the neighborhood. It was money 60 years ago and quickly went to shit. And when the driver had helped me unload everything into her tiny front porch, I paid him and told him to have a great fucking day. He laughed and tugged my braid, told me to take care of myself. Menopause did strange things to Gran. She was a serial bride and widow when she was younger, but that time convinced her she was dried up and halfway into the grave. So she holed up in her house and started filling the rooms and halls with dead things. No, seriously, with dead things. Even the taxidermist thought she was creepy. And you would have to be really fucking bad to win that award. She had things I purchased pre-made, like game or exotics. Things like bears or mountain lions that weren't something you saw in the city. She had birds and armadillos and personal most hated, the collection of neighborhood cats and dogs she had been killed in various ways over the years, and that she had taken in to be stuffed. They were everywhere, even in the bathrooms and kitchen. They were filled every room. When I walked in, dragging my things behind me to the entryway, she was nowhere to be seen. I heard her, though. If you're a rapist, I'm all dried up. Don't waste your time. If you're a thief, I have nothing worth stealing. If you're a murderer, shame on you. I followed the sound of her voice and finally found her in a small family room with narrow walkways between the stacks of stuffed animals. When she was in an easy chair, wearing a full-body tiger print unitard and a dark brown fur coat, chain smoking, and she watched The Price is Right on the 7-inch television, whose pictures wavered and frequently fell into discoloration. She didn't even look at me into the commercials. Oh, you're here. Upstairs, 3rd floor on the right. Be a good girl and bring me a bottle of whiskey on the counter before you go. I got it for her. Why not? And watching amazement, she poured an entire bottle into small dishes and bowls in front of dead cats and dogs, lined up the couch that could have been hideous under the best of circumstances. Drink up, my beauties. Being dead is no treat. You've earned it. Whiskey fumes quickly filled the room, joining with the messy scent of fur and stale cigarettes. Upstairs, 3rd floor on the right led into a room full of so many dead animals they tumbled out when I opened the door. I spent the rest of that day and all night hauling them out and finding places to stick them so I could bring up my things. I slept curled up on the top of a biggest suitcase because the sheets were so gross. I spent the next day cleaning the room top to bottom, beating the dust and mouse droppings and mouse corpses out of the mattress, and putting my own sheets in the home on the bed. When I had everything arranged close to home as I could manage, I went back downstairs. The only indication Gran had moved was her unitard, now a bright shiny purple. I waited until the commercial has been and then cleared my throat. I've cleaned out the room, I told her. If you put any more dead things in there while I'm living here, I'll burn the house down. She laughed and slapped me. Good girl, I like your gumption. And that was moving in with my gran. The setting changed, but life didn't. She had her groceries delivered once a week, and by a nervous-looking boy got a tip as big as the grocery bill, purely because he was the only way he'd come to our neighborhood. It was pretty simple to call grocery store and have new things added like to the staples. I was enrolled in a school that taught absolutely nothing. There were teachers that wouldn't even take attendance because they didn't want a truancy to stick them with these kids for another year. There was supposed to be some really good teachers in the school, but they were very few and far between. I never got any of them. The rest were burned out and didn't care anymore as long as they got a paycheck. The students certainly encouraged that. Drug deals went right there in the classrooms, even in elementary school, on behalf of the older siblings. When I went up to the middle school where metal detectors on every outer door, but no one gave a shit or investigated when they went off, which was frequently. No one noticed if you were in class, no one called home and checked up on the students who had been gone for several days in a row. I tested that once. I stayed home for a full week. I didn't even get makeup work when I went back. I only returned because I was bored. Sad, really. I left everyone else alone when they left me alone, too. I didn't leave the house after dark, and every night I fell asleep to a lullaby of gunshots and sirens. And when Grand's lawn guy came twice a month, I hid under a bed in case he came into the house. He was probably in the late 20s, maybe a little older, and always wore jeans that were too tight and too low, trying to make a best of a package that even at the age I didn't think was very impressive. He liked to call me pretty girly, and as if he were there when I came home from school, he tried to touch me and asked me to bring him things. I kicked him once, right in the balls, and he cursed and chased me into the house. But he tripped over a stag in the entryway, and Gran ripped him a new one for making too much noise during her soaps. After that, I hung out in the gas station a few blocks over until I saw his truck drive past. And your parents never questioned your well-being? He knows it's a stupid question, but it's already out of his mouth, and he nods even as her mouth twists. My parents never came to see me, never called, never sent cards or gifts or anything. Mom sent checks for the first 3 months, Dad for the first 5, but then those stopped too. I never saw my parents or heard from them again after I went to Grand's. I honestly don't know if they're still alive. They've been at this all day. The birthday cake, the first thing she had since last dinner. He could feel his stomach complaining. Now she must be at least as hungry. It's not been almost 24 hours since the FBI arrived at the garden. They both have been awake longer than that. Inara, I'm willing to let you tell things in your own way, but I need you to give me a straightforward answer in one question. Should we have child services in here? No, she says immediately. And that's the truth. How close is that truth to a lie? It's actually a smile this time, crooked and weary. Not even so small a smile that it softens on her entire face. I turned 18 yesterday. Happy birthday to me. You were 14 when you got to New York, Edison demands. Yep. What the hell? Gran died, she shrugs, reaching for a water bottle. I came home from school when she was dead on the chair and burns on her fingers, and when the cigarette burned all the way down. Kind of amazed the whole damn place wasn't on fire from the whiskey fumes. I think her heart gave out or something. Did you report it? No. The lawn guy or the grocery boy would find her when they went to get paid. I didn't want anyone arguing about what to do with me. Maybe they would have tracked down one of my parents and I'd be forced to go with them. Or they'd just dump me into the system. Or maybe they just track me down one of those uncles or aunts on my dad's side and shove me into yet another relative who didn't want me. I didn't like those options. So what'd you do? I packed a suitcase and a duffel, then raided Grant's stash. Now Victor's not sure if he's going to regret the answer he asked you. Stash? Of cash. Grant only sort of trusted banks. So any time she got a check, she cashed it and hid half of it in a German shepherd's ass. The tail was on the hinge, so you could reach under and pull out the money. She takes a sip, then purses her lips and presses them against the mouth of the bottle, letting the bottle soak against the chapped cracks. There was almost 10 grand in there, she continues as she pulls the bottle away. I hid it away in my suitcase and duffel, spending the night at the house, and in the morning I woke up, walked down to the bus station rather than school, and bought a ticket to New York. You spent the night in the house with your dead grandmother? She wasn't stuffed yet, but otherwise what was the difference than any other night? He's grateful for the static in his ear. We ordered food for the 3 of you. You have any reports of the observation room? Couple more minutes on it. And Ramirez called. A few girls have started talking. Not much yet. They seem more concerned with the dead ones than themselves. Senator Kingsley's on her way from Massachusetts. Well, I started on as good news. It's probably too much to hope that Senator will be forced to make an early landing somewhere due to bad weather. Victor shakes his head and leans back in his chair. The senator isn't here yet. They'll deal with her once she is. We're going to take a break soon and we can all eat. But one more question before that. Only one? Tell us about how you know the name to how you came to the garden. That isn't a question. Edison slaps his thigh impatiently, but still Victor who speaks. How do you come to the garden? How did you come to the garden? I was kidnapped. 3 teenage daughters, and you can practically hear the unspoken duh at the end of it. And Nara, you're really good at that. Please. She sighs and brings up her feet into the edge of the chair, wrapping her bandaged hands around her ankles. Evening Star was a pretty nice restaurant, reservation only unless it was a slow night, but the prices were high enough for most people who wouldn't just walk in the street for a meal. On normal nights, the waiters were in tuxedos and waitresses in black strapless gowns and with standalone collars and cuffs like the tuxes. We even had black blow ties that were a bitch and a half to get right. We weren't allowed clip-ons. Gullion knew how to cater to stupidly rich, though, so you could actually rent out the entire restaurant for special occasions and put the waitstaff in costumes. There are a few basic rules. He drew the line at indecency, but within a fairly broad range of options, you got to keep them. He always gave us warnings about costumes, so if we would trade shifts, we didn't think we would deal with it. 2 weeks before my 16th birthday, or as far as the girls knew, my 21st, the restaurant got rented out by someone doing a fundraiser for one of the theaters. Their first show was going to be a production of Madame Butterfly, so we were dressed accordingly. Only girls were allowed to work this one, by request of the client, and we were all given black dresses that came high around the pair of huge wire and silk wings that stayed on the spirit gum and latex. Fuck, what a process that was. We all had to wear our hair completely up. We all agreed that it was better than shirtless fetish costumes or a Civil War themed wedding rehearsal dinner that stuck us all hoop skirts that we finally converted to Christmas light chandeliers when we'd sick of them standing up in the entire corner of the apartment. Even if that meant getting to work hours early so we would put the damn wings on, the rest of it wasn't that bad. We could all use the dresses again. Why, trying to wait tables with large wings behind you was a clusterfuck, though. By the time the main course had been served, we could retreat to the restaurant during the fundraising presentation. Most of us didn't know whether to swear or laugh. A number of us were doing both. Rebecca, our lead hostess, sighed and sank down a stool, dropping her feet in the sideways crate. Her pregnancy had made it finally high heels impossible, and also spared her from having a bare indignity of wings. This thing needs to come out of me now, she groaned. I squeezed behind the stool as best I could of the wings, started massaging her tight shoulders and back. Hope speaked up at the back of the gap in the swinging doorway. Anyone else think a guy in charge is totally fuckable for an old man? He's not that old, and watch your mouth, Whitney retorted. There's a certain words Golian referred when we didn't use at work, even in the kitchens, and fuck was one of them. Well, his son looks older than me, so he's an old man. Then ogle the son. No thanks. He's hot, but there's something wrong with him. He isn't looking at you? He's looking a lot, at a bunch of us. He was just wrong. I'd rather I fuck the old man. We stayed in the kitchen, chatting and making up gossip about the guests, until the presentation's intermission, when we circulated with the refills and bottles of wines and dessert trays at the hostess table. I got a look at Hope's old man and his son. Right away I knew what she meant about the son. He was handsome, well-muscled, good-featured, with brown eyes, and his father's dark blonde hair, which looked good against the tanned skin, even if the tan looked a little fake. It was something deeper than that, though. A cruelty that showed through the otherwise charming smile, the way he watched all of us as we moved through the room. Next to him, his father was simply charming, with an easy smile and thanked us all wordlessly in our efforts. You see, he stopped me with 2 fingers against my wrist, not too familiar, not threatening. That's a lovely tattoo, my dear. I glanced down at the slit of my skirt. All of us in the apartment, even Catherine, got one together and got matching tattoos a few months before. Something that he still found absurd and couldn't quite figure out why we'd done it. Except for most of us had a bit tipsy, and Hope nagged us until we gave in. It was on the outside of my right ankle, just above the bone. An elegant thing of sweeping black lines. Hope had picked it out. Sophia was sober one, argued against the butterfly, because it was overdone and so damn typical. But Hope didn't budge. She was so a freaking honey badger when she wanted to be. She called it a tribal butterfly. Normally we would keep tattoos covered up with clothing, makeup for work, but because of the event's theme, Gullion said that we could leave them uncovered. Thank you, I poured the sparkling wine into a glass. Are you fond of butterflies? Not particularly, but doesn't seem the right thing to mention the theme party. They're beautiful. Yes, but like most beautiful creatures, they're very short-lived. His pale green eyes traveled to the tattoo and ankle up my body until he could smile to my eyes. It's not just your tattoo that's lovely. I made a note to tell Hope that the old man was creepy as his son. Thank you, sir. You seem young to be working in a restaurant like this. One thing no one had ever said to me that I seemed too young for something. I stared at him a moment too long. I saw some kind of satisfaction flicker in his pale eyes. Some of us are older than our years. He said finally, and promptly cursed myself. The last thing I needed was a wealthy customer convincing Gillian I was lying about my age. He didn't say anything when I moved to the next glass, but I felt his eyes on me all the way back to the kitchen. During the second half of the presentation, I snuck back into the locker room and dig a tampon out of my purse. When I turned to leave the bathroom, the son was standing in the doorway. He was maybe in his mid-20s, but alone in a small room with him, he definitely gave off a more experienced vibe of menace. I didn't generally credit Hope for being too perceptive, but he was right. There was something really wrong with this guy. I'm sorry, but this is a staff-only area. He ignored me, still blocking the doorway, as one hand reached out to flick the edge of one of my wings. My father is an exquisite taste, don't you think? Sir, you need to leave. This is not a customer area. I know you're supposed to say that, and I say it too. Keggs, one of the busboys, shouldered him roughly out of the way. I know the owner would be sorry to make you leave the restaurant, but he would do it without regret if you rejoined your party. The stranger looked him over, but Keggs was barely and perfectly capable of slinging people around like beer kegs, hence the name. Which to scowl, the stranger nodded and stalked away. Keggs watched him until he turned the corner into the main dining room. Oh, you okay, lovely? I am, thanks. We called him our bus boy, mainly, because Gillian always assigned him those sections he considered us his girls. Whether he was working that night or not, Keggs was always the closing girls to the subway and saw us safely into the train. He was the one person who inexplicably ignored Gillian's rules without tattoos and piercing. True, he was a busboy, not a waiter, but he wasn't interacting with the customers. He was still visible. Gillian never commented on the gauged ears, the pierced eyebrow, lip, and tongue, or the heavy black tribal tattoos that marched all the way down both arms and nearly glowed through his white dress shirt. They peeked out of the cuffs into the back of his hands and back of the neck it wasn't obscured by long hair. Sometimes he knotted his hair up and you could see the tattoos climbing his shaved lower half of his skull. He kissed my cheek and walked me to the bathroom. Standing outside, I could take care of things, and walked me back to the kitchen. Be careful around the host's son, he announced to all the girls. I told you, giggled Hope. That night, Keggs escorted us all the way to the apartment. Next day, Gullion listened to what was happening and concerned frown, then told us not to worry too much about it, because the Kynes had returned to Maryland, or so we thought. A couple weeks later, when Naomi and I left the library one afternoon and bumped into one of her classmates, I waved her and then went on with him and told her I could get the rest of the way back home by myself. I managed 3 blocks before something stabbed me. Before I could even cry out, my legs fell out from under me and the world turned black. I feel like it's a weird turn of events to go from reading like FNAF or something like that straight into like genuinely twisted and just terrifying things like the Butterfly Garden. But I think that's just a common trend, and I mean, I'm an adult, so I gotta read adult books. I can't always be reading young adult books. I don't know what FNAF is put under. I'm pretty sure one time I read it as for children, but I don't think that's right. But anyways, it's the only drink I got. What I do know is right is that today we read pages 41 to 60. Next time we'll be reading pages 61 to 83. Who decided that? Oh, I'm gonna have a big word with past me. Oh, I'm gonna beat him up so good. Beat him up so bad. No, I'm kidding. I knew how to do that. Because next episode is gonna be the end of part 1. What does that mean? I don't know. But I know part 1 ends next episode. Part 2 ends the episode after, or starts the episode after that. And then we're not getting to part 3 for a while. So, yeah. Get ready for that fun. So, without further ado, let's get to the reading corner of the day. Doing it up Stonsey's way. Today we are learning about the German Pinscher. Whew. Now, if you might remember from last episode, and I could just be saying this wrong because, it's been like a week since I recorded that episode. This dog is definitely the opposite of a giant. Let's see if my memory suits me well when I record or when I edit the working group video, huh? Yeah, that's not gonna be for a while, huh? But yeah, he's a small little dude. Actually, it reminds me a lot of Scrappy Doo. But before I can make fun of anything, or have a strong opinion on anything, especially if I like it, I should learn of its history. Not only does it make me look smarter in front of my mom, my dad, my sister, my brother, or my snowman that's outside, and... Hey, where'd it go? Where'd that snowman go? Why is there footsteps away from where the snowman was? What's that in that other window? I'll figure it out later. But, not only does it make me smart in front of them, but it also makes me more intelligent. Now, intelligence doesn't necessarily lie in just knowing things. It comes into knowing things and, teaching them to others. That's why the smartest people you ever meet are doctors or teachers. But then again, there are some not smart doctors and teachers. I think education really boggles down to how you be a good teacher is being able to get along with your students while also being hard-boiling and foreboding, but also not letting them be able to push you over. Because, like, if day one, if students are immediately nice to you, you're a pushover. But if you're like, they're immediately sketchy of you and they're all quiet of you, and the next couple of days they're kind of fond of you, that's where you know you're a good teacher type of thing. Also, I have a cookie next to me I wanted to eat after the video, and it's covered in hearts, and I'm angry about it. And I'm sad about it. I'm gonna cry about it in 15 seconds. But yeah, first we gotta learn the history of the German Pinscher. So the history of the German Pinscher, if I'm saying that right, please comment down below if I'm not. Because I could not be, and I could be. It's hard to say. Is that the progenitor of the better-known Pinscher breeds? The German Pinscher is an old breed that can trace back to German Breiberhund of the 7th century and the Tanner of the 14th century and the 1600s dog with his ancestry or type were mixed with black and tan terriers, creating the Rattenfänger, a versatile working ratter and watchdog. The Rattenfänger became a Pinscher and remained a hard-working dog for several centuries, especially valued for the rodent-catching ability around the stables. With the advent of dog shows in the late 1800s, interest in the Pinscher grew. The first Pinscher breed standard was drawn up in 1884. The breed didn't garner immediate favor, with dog fanciers and numbers fell in an effort to count, register, and exhibit Pinschers and thwarted the World Wars. After World War II, the breed was on the verge of extinction. Between 1949 and 1958, not a single Pinscher litter was registered in West Germany, and now the Pinscher had to rely on its descendant with a miniature Pinscher. For survival, 4 oversized miniature Pinschers were selected and registered in 1958 by the Pinscher Schnauzer Club in West Germany. The Pinscher female was smuggled from East Germany, where Pinschers still existed, and bred to 3 different mini pin males. Almost all current Pinschers descended of these 5 dogs. German Pinschers began their presence in America in the late 1970s. In 2001, the American Kennel Company, or AKC, admitted the German Pinscher to the miscellaneous class, and in 2003 became a bona fide member of the working group. This must be the most current dog ever. That was 22 years ago. Put that in your perspective. 22 years ago was 2003. Crazy of a thought. But what's the temperament? How can I get this dog that was brutally smuggled across countries and forced to breed with other dogs into my home? You know, I kind of feel bad for calling it Scrappy Doo now. Well, the temperament of the German Pinscher is that it's vivacious, tenacious, and courageous. The German Pinscher is a lively, self-appointed property patroller. Man, say that 1,000 times fast. The German Pinscher is a lively, self-appointed property patroller. Self-appointed property patroller, self-appointed property patroller, self-appointed property patroller. I can do it. Ever alert, the German Pinscher does not bark frivolously, but does sound the alert to the intruders. A quick learner, the German Pinscher is nonetheless not inclined to obey unless there's a good reason to do so. The breed is playful and affectionate and good and considerate with children. Can be wary of strangers. German Pinschers may argue over which of them gets to be the boss, and they may not be good with small pets, especially rodents. Well, that makes sense. They have a whole line of killing rats, so that only makes sense. But what's the upkeep? How do I keep these German Pinschers doing what they love to do best? Well, the upkeep of the German Pinschers is that they like to be thick of things and do not appreciate getting left outside alone or relegated to a kennel. They're devoted to their family and insist on accompanying family members to bed, supervising their housework, directing their gardening, and providing the evening's entertainment. This is a high-energy dog that is easily bored and frustrated if not given a way to stimulate its mind and exercise its body. Grooming is wash and wear. Only occasional brushing is required. That's what we like to hear. What you don't like to hear is that if you're a child, please cover your ears. If you're an adult or teenager who owns a German Pinscher, please grab your notebooks, as I'm going to talk about the concerns. Though, maybe put away that notebook. Actually, this dog looks like it's perfect. So the major concerns are nothing. Their minor concerns are nothing. They're occasionally seen with nothing. Your suggested tips when you take them to the doctor anyway are for their hips and eyes. And their lifespan is 12 to 15 years. That is crazy. So these dogs can live up to, what is that, 105? Is that right? 15 by 7, right? So we already have 70. So what's 7 times 5? 35. Very good. 105. That is crazy. And of course, a majority of dogs outlive their lifespan. So that's like, goodness. So, wow. Good for them. So this is just a pretty good dog, all things considered. In the future, I might get a German Pinscher. I'll update you guys, and you guys can stay with me through it. But what's the form and function? Imagine you don't have these little cute dog pictures in front of you. Well, the form and function of the German Pinscher is that it's a medium-sized dog with muscular square build, light enough to be extremely agile and solid enough to be strong. It can hunt all day, aided by extremely sensitive senses. If it turns up a rodent, it can catch and dispatch it. If it turns up an unwelcome human, it can sound an alert and immediately encourage the person to leave. The German Pinscher, I was going to say person Pinscher because it kind of sounds like it, has found a new niche as a companion and watchdog of the ideal size and loyal temperament. Now, for the tier list of today's episode, let me explain this to you in a cool song so we can all understand and get along. I don't mean to rhyme the words, but listen to me, you bunch of birds. I was going to say turds, but that's mean. Anyways, 5 is the best, 4 is better, 3 is average, 2 is the worst, and 1 could be the worst unless it is grooming. So, energy levels out of 4, exercise requirements are out of 3, so pretty average. Playfulness and affection level are out of 4, so very loving. Friendliness towards dogs is out of 2. Ooh. Friendliness towards other pets is out of 1. Ooh. Friendliness towards strangers is out of 2. So all really low. Ease of training is out of 3, so pretty average. Watchdog abilities out of 5, they can keep an eye. Protection abilities out of 3, so higher than average. I think that's how that one goes. Grooming requirements is out of 1, we love it. Cold tolerance is out of 1, we don't love it. But heat tolerance is out of 4, which is higher than average, which is good. The healthy weight of a male and female German Pinscher is 25 to 35 pounds. I can bench these guys. Well, that's actually really sad to say. The average bar is 45 pounds. I swear I'm stronger than that, guys. I truly do. And the height of a German Pinscher, both male and female, is 17 to 20 inches. Because let's face it, if they were feet, we'd be living in a world of giants. But honestly, I think these German Pinschers deserve it. I swear we've talked about this dog before, but maybe not one of this, oh goodness, scale. And that it is the dog we're going to be talking about in the next episode. So, I hope you guys have a fantastic, wonderful day. People like, be efficient. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.